послы идут, да. أوكي. أيها الحضور الكرام، أصدقائي الأعزاء، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Dear friends, I'll make a short introduction. It's a great pleasure of mine and my honor to introduce the leading scholar of Russia, an outstanding Russian researcher of the Holy Qur'an, an expert on Arabic manuscripts, and director of historical sciences, Professor Efim Rezvan. Short biography, because it can be described in very lengthy terms, but I would like to put it in a nutshell. Mr. Rezvan is the editor-in-chief of the international scientific journal Manuscripta Orientalia, which is well known to scholars and scientists of Muslim studies. He is the director of the Museum of Islamic Culture in St. Petersburg, head of International Center for Islamic Studies at the Kunstkamera Museum, which is the oldest, the first public museum of Russia, founded by Peter the Great in 1714. And what is need to be said that Mr. Efim Rezvan is the author of more than 300 scientific articles for a number of Russian and international encyclopedias. His main research is the monograph called The Qur'an and Its World. He finds materials for his work in field researches and expeditions around the world, and mainly focusing on two regions, which is the Middle East and Central Asia. During last 10 years, he visited Yemen, Uzbekistan, Egypt, Oman, Qatar, Jordan, and other countries. Mr. Efim Rezvan created a series of documentaries and exhibition projects. He has a number of courses for students at leading universities in Russia, also in Moscow Center for Stanford University, the Qatar branch of University College London, as well as universities and institutes in Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. He gave public lectures in Kuwait, Indonesia, Oman, Uzbekistan, as well as for the students of the Faculty of Theology of University of Tehran. So please welcome Mr. Efim Rezvan and his close colleague and associate, Ms. Anna Kudryavtseva. Before I leave, I would also like to extend my gratitude and thanks to the organizers of today's meeting, personally Sheikha May and her wonderful staff, who made it possible for us to gather together in this wonderful place. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa al-barakat. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, thank you very much for coming to share with us the forthcoming hour. The topic of my presentation is the Quran in Russia, history, manuscripts, and research projects. Please believe me that to present the topic in an hour, it is a challenge because this is at least 3 university courses. But I will do my best. So we start with history. And I would like to stress that I will speak about the history of the Quran in Russia, but you will feel that I'm speaking about the Russian identity. Don't be surprised of this. So much had been written about the Quran in Western Europe, and much less you can find about the history of the Quran in Russia. But if you look in the sources, you will immediately find out that most important rulers of Russia, of both Tsarist time and modern time, has in their libraries the manuscripts of the Quran, the rare editions of the Quran. The manuscripts of the Quran played really important, sometimes political role. I will try to show it for you. The Quran for several centuries was sounded within the walls of Kremlin because there was the Tatar mission. And after the disintegration of the Golden Horde, Russia inherited the huge territories and inherited not only territories, but sometimes the way of life. And I believe that it is probably the only one officially Christian state which had not only coat of arms, you know, Russian coat of arms with double eagles, yeah, but it has Tugra. It had Tugra. You can see in the angle. Bi'inayati Rabbul Alamin you can find here. And since the 18th century, and as far as I know, until 1913, this Tugra was used instead of coat of arms in the official documents which were sent by Russian state to its Muslim neighbors. One of the copies of the Quran which is kept in Moscow now is very important because, how to say it, we were living among Muslims and Muslims were living among us. If you compare Russian Oriental studies and Russian cultural Orientalism as well with the Western one, with the one of Western Europe, you will see a lot of differences. Because Muslims were never the others for us. And we have one and the same problems and one and the same victories. And this manuscript is very important because it was for many, many years used by Muslims who pay tribute to the Russian Tsar, used for the oath. And this is the very first in the corner, the very first translation of one ayah of the Quran made in Old Russian. The most important role in many, Peter the Great, we called him the Great because he changed greatly the way of life of Russia, was also really the first one who pushed the scientific study of the Quran. They appeared very important research studies on. In those times, they were on the world level, and the first two Russian translations of the Quran, full text of the Quran, appeared in this time. I have forgotten to put inside my presentation, but can't to stop myself to tell this story. You know, there are the so-called in Spain, there are the Qurans in Alhamiyada. This is the Qurans which were written especially for Muslims of Spain. And it is nearly as here. You could see the text of the Quran and the translation in Alhamiyada in Spanish. And in Russia, now more to say you more exactly, Belarus, we have the tradition very close to this of Spanish Alhamiyada. This is the tradition of Belarusian Tatar, who had the text, who presented the full text of the Quran, but also the Slavonic translation, but in Arabic letters. It is fantastically interesting to look through. And the second person who played, also who changed a lot in our history, was Catherine II, great Russian ruler, and in her time the Quran was first published at state expense and using the typeface cast specially done for this purpose. And in the difference with the Western European editions of the Quran, this was Muslim, because it was Mullah Uthman Ismail who not only was the creator of this typeface, but he gave in the text the marginal commentary. I was very happy during my expeditions to find the copies of this Quran, and it was this typeface was sent to Kazan, and a lot of copies was produced there, and I was able to find it all over the Muslim world. And even I had seen the handwritten copy of the Quran with the ornament taken from this edition. It is very important for me. It is not my words. It's the text of the Quran I speaking about is looking like this. I would like to cite the words of Likhachev, the leading French specialist in the Quran, who say that this edition, so-called St. Petersburg or Kazan edition, played decisive role in a century-long process of establishing the unified text of the Quran. This is not me, it is a French colleague. It is very important that I also stressed that we were living for a long time from the very beginning together with Muslims, and in the end of the 90s, beginning of the 20th century, we have the Muslim revival. And fantastic generation of scholars appeared. Unfortunately, their fate was difficult because then there was the civil war in Russia, the revolution. They were just shading between opposite camps, but anyhow, they produced a lot of fantastic, very important works also based on devoted to the Quran. And they established very interesting, very important educational tradition, which was called Jadidiyya. And Jamal ad-Din al-Afghani, for example, came to Russia just to study the experience. I was very happy. You can see the photo of Musa Jaralabegi, a fantastic Tatar scholar who made the very interesting Tatar translation of the Quran, and it disappeared. Yeah, he had to leave Russia, and after the revolution of 1917, and I did my best to find it in the libraries. I know well that he gave the whole library to the National Library in Istanbul now, but no trace of this translation. I have a student. When a young girl, I tell her the story that this is one of the most important goals of Russian Oriental studies to find this translation. And then, step by step, we were living in one and the same city for many years. I found the daughter of Mr. Begiev, who kept this. Even it was published in one copy, and then there was no circulation. Happily now, the translation is published. As for the manuscript, we have a lot of collections of Oriental manuscripts, very, very important. Generally speaking, there are 3 cities in the world which are sharing the most important Oriental manuscript collections. This is London, Paris, and St. Petersburg. I'm very happy to live in my city, and we have not dozens, but hundreds of the copies of very interesting Quranic manuscripts produced all over the world, of different shapes, with different illumination, in different scripts, whatever you want. Here, I would like to speak about just 2 manuscripts, but most important. In 1869, Russian Turkestan Governor General von Kaufmann handed to the public library of St. Petersburg the copy of Samarkand Kufi Quran. It is huge. It was like this. And Russian scholars immediately start working with the text, studying the tradition. Now I can tell you that it could be dated scientifically by the very beginning of the 2nd century of Hijrah. And not long ago, we were finally able to trace its history. So, in 1260 or 1262, the Egyptian Sultan Baybars sent to the Khan of Golden Horde Berke royal gifts, very important. And one of them was the Qur'an of Uthman. They called it like this officially, and in those times you will see in my presentation these copies of the Qur'an of Uthman, and now 5 in the world, named like this. So they played the role of insignia. Those who have the copy have the right for power. And Timurlan, who did his best to create the huge empire. He defeated the army of the Golden Horde, and among the loot, fantastic loot he obtained, was this copy of the Quran, which was brought to Samarkand and came to the hands of Khwaja Ahrar, leading Sufi leader of Naqshbandi in those times. He was the tutor of Timurid princes, and I had written here that he had friendly correspondence with such famous poets as Nava'i and Jami, and he was one of the richest persons of his time. The Quran of Uthman remains symbol of the power even when it came to St. Petersburg, because it means that those who keep the Quran of Uthman had the right of power. And was even the idea to take to St. Petersburg this huge law, which is presented in front of the old mosque in Samarkand. It is 2 meters for you to imagine how it's big, and it was used to present another copy of the Quran. It is the legend that one of the calligraphers showed to Timur the copy of the Quran, just use here to put on the finger. He said, no, please do for me the biggest possible Quran. So he created this one. It was also the symbol of power. And now it is separated in between several libraries, the separate follows of it. And even sometimes not the volumes, but the lines taken from it was cut like this. In 1918, by order of Lenin, the leader of Bolshevik Revolution, this copy this is official document signed by most important Bolshevik leaders. These manuscripts were returned back to Muslims. This means the handing over a part of power in exchange for participation in the revolutionary project. A major success, now the second one, and also the Quran of Uthman. The major success for St. Petersburg scholars was the acquisition by the Institute of Oriental Studies in 1937, the significant fragment of the Quran, it 40% of the text. And I was very lucky to start working with it, to understand its real meaning, because for at least 5 centuries, Muslims of Central Asia believe that it is the true Quran of Uthman. It is also 2nd century Hijrah, and you see there is a kind of ornament illumination, yeah? But it was written in a time when Muslim, you know, the title of surahs were invented by people, by humans, and the text of the Quran is that of God. And in those times, people were afraid to mix. And the earliest manuscripts of the Quran had instead the title of surah, the ornaments, just free space, empty space. This manuscript also had this, but in something like 50 years, it was filled with these ornaments and title of surahs. Now I know very well how the manuscripts came to the territory of modern Uzbekistan, because I also was very lucky to find another part of the manuscript in small village, Kishlak, named Katalangar on Afghani-Uzbek frontier, on Afghani-Uzbek border. And as far as we know now, it was brought by the members of the Arabic tribe, which started its migration in the time of the Prophet. Went through Arabia, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and finally, because of the political situation, they were taken to the territory of modern Uzbekistan. And they appeared in another surrounded by other people. This was the other world a little bit, and they have to become the part of the society of their new place of living. In Katalangar, there is a very old mosque, which, according to the tradition, was built together by all members of all the tribes, playing special role in it. And this, you see, Sunduk, where I was happy to find the followers of the Quran. And Arabic resettlers appealed to another Sufi order, Ishqiya, for support. But it was kind of also the civil war in those times, in between Timurid and Shaybanid, Uzbek sultans. And on the side of Timurid, it was Naqshbandiya and one copy of the Quran. On the side of Shaybanid, it was Ishqiya and this copy of the Quran. So it was the struggle of political parties which have the banners of them, these ancient Quranic copies. And by the way, among the objects which these Arabic recitals brought to the territory of Uzbekistan was hirka, which they believe to be the hirka of the Prophet. Then in the 18th century it was returned back to Kandahar, where it is now kept as a relic. And Mullah Omar used it to sanctify his power and stress his messianic role of a new caliph. So, for me, it's very important that this political role of the manuscripts, like a symbol of power, was, to my mind, the cause why we have this manuscript, because they were kept like very, very important thing, priceless among the generation. So in 1905, the facsimile of this huge copy I speaking first was published in St. Petersburg and used by Russian government as diplomatic gift. Now, this I told you that we have big part of the Quran, biggest part of this copy of the Quran we have in St. Petersburg, but part in Uzbekistan. Before the Russian President Putin visit to Saudi Arabia in February 2007, the manuscript was made in Russia in thin gold, and it was presented. Then, in 2015, the President Vladimir Putin presented to Ali Khamenei the copy of another Quran, 100% copies. I was happy to participate in producing this copy. So, as you see, the copies of the Quran still continue survive its political role. We can treat it as a very, very important historical source of the text history. It's very important because of the, in Western Europe there are several scholars who said that the text of the Quran we have appeared only in the 10th century. Many, please believe me, I know them very well, and we are meeting in the conferences, and just the existence of these two copies I present showed that they are mistaken. All these very complicated theories based on this or that, misleading, and these manuscripts, they are all now because they are not supporting but saying for us that the Muslim tradition of collecting, surviving, and living of the continuous living of the text of the Quran, the Muslim tradition is true. So the third part of my presentation is devoted to the research projects. We have also many, and I would like to speak about only one, which I believe most important now because I myself involved very much in it, and my younger colleague Anna, she is now knowing much more in the field than me, and I'm really happy that it is such. I called it the Quranic ethnography. We need it to provide the independent evidence that can sometimes specify the chronology of the events. We have these discussions with the Western European scholars, and we need additional arguments. It is very important that this approach helped us to interpret the meaning of the Quran, because they reconstruct the historical background of the time. We start the project with the aim to create new scientific translation, Russian translation of the Quran, which will differ greatly from the other translations, because it will be based on this approach. And you know that Quran exists only in tafsir, in its interpretation. But even earliest tafsir were created in the society which differed greatly from the society of the time of the Prophet. And even for the scholars of the 9th and 10th centuries, for example, it was quite difficult sometimes to understand the true meaning of the world, because they were living in big towns, in the cities. They are using the same words, but the meaning of the words, you know, it is also changing. The words are the same, but meaning is changing. So we, using tafsir, we can know how people understand the Quran in Iraq or Persia, in China or Russia, in 12th century or 20th century, by, you know, the supporters of different political and ideological trends, which in tafsir, you know, presented directly. So for us, it's very important that the basic of our approach, that the Quran explained itself. We are using the Quran, the context of the Quran and pre-Islamic poetry, I will say it, to understand perfectly what we can read in the holy text. Sometimes it is quite difficult. For example, many years ago, while reading the translation, the best Russian translation of the Quran, made by the teacher of my teacher, Ignatius Krachkovsky, and I was stumbled over the phrase, "We brand him upon the trunk." I just don't understand what it is about. And it is said about the sinner, and the Arabs blend their livestock, pressing heated metal shape against the skin. Arabians also burn a hole in the nose of a bulky camel and put a rein in it, and some faces that day will be contorted. You'd think they'd have holes in them. So the sinners are compared with the camels in this way. But you had to know how they stamp the camels to understand, you know. Then they smear the skin of camels suffering from mange with melted tar or liquid pitch. And this is about sinners of the Quran was small. Their garments of liquid pitch and their faces covered by the fire. We can compare it with the verses of Tarafa, originated on Bahrain, who was exiled by his countrymen and was left abandoned like a diseased camel smeared with pitch. Within the approach suggested by Anna Kudryavtseva was an attempt to make the analysis of three very important terminology groups. And this is the clothes, housing, system of sustenance, agriculture, economic activities, food. Thus we managed to show that the Quranic paradise. So please understand, the God had to go to the very heart of Muslims, yeah? So the images had to be the exact and understandable for the listeners of the Prophet. And the samples which we now see in the text of the Quran, they reflect the reality of the Arabia in those times. And for example, the paradise is in Darajat, but one of the Daraja of the paradise is the castles the samples of which we have now in Jordan, for example. And together with Anna, we were happy to study these Umayyad castles, which were constructed on the base of Byzantine ones. So if you compare the presentation of the houses in paradise and compare it with what we have seen in Jordan, you will see a lot of similarities. We were not the very first to start the work over the job. We have the predecessors over in Germany, first of all, and for us it's very important that the most important idea for us is to study the everyday life of Arabia at the turn of the 8th and 7th century. And one of the first scholars to do the job was Georg Jacob, and his work was published in 1895, but unfortunately there were he had no much followers. The language of the Quran is most important historical source for us because, as I told you, for us the language, the Quran explains itself. Quranic lingua sacra contains a unique semantic code that is inextricably connected with both situational and broad social and cultural context. A thorough analysis of Quranic text allows to elicit thematic markers that evoked associations in the Quran listeners. These associations complemented this text with symbolic meaning. And it is very important for us that the world view of the people living in Arabia in the time of the Prophet differed greatly from ours. It was, the terminology is very, very detailed. For example, there are at least 10 terms for the cups which was used by Muslims in paradise to drinking wine, and 10. And one is made of gold, the second made of silver, the third is produced in Byzantine, the fourth is produced in Persia. So they use just one word. We now, and usually it's like a piala, it is like this. But we translated it to the goblet, for example. No, just in this thing, but for them, they have the exact meaning. And happily, we have the predecessors in Russia, and it was Ignatiy Krachkovsky, which I meet, and his pupil, Ksenia Kashtalova, who in after-revolutionary times created a fantastic job, predicted greatly what we are doing now. There is another dimension of the uniqueness of the Quran. It is a monument that has been revealed in the course of mighty religious political movement that largely changed the world history and is closely associated with this movement. The language of the Quran, its emotional deepness, the system of precision of argumentation were such that they not only served to achieve a certain purpose, but also made the Quran attack that a large part of humanity has continued to turn for over 1500 years. If nobody knows the history of the Quran and have only the result that it is a book in the world which people believe to be sacred for 15 centuries, and every generation is trying to find the new meaning in it. This is the miracle. Anyhow, it is a miracle in itself. This pre-Islamic poetry, as I told, most important source for our job. Arabic epigraphy, another very important. Please believe that these very simple words cut in the rocks can be very, very informative. And if you compare them with the pre-Islamic poetry and with the terminology of the Quran, you can understand much more. Just one sample, I don't want to give the details, but in 120 miles from Najran, you can find Bir Hima Rock, the whole encyclopedia of the history of Arabia. God knows you have their texts starting from, I don't know, prehistory up to the time of the Prophet and later. Mikhail Petrovsky, who is the director of the State Hermitage Museum, I was happy to work with him for my own whole life, and we were working together in Soviet Yemen expedition in 1980s. He stressed the importance. He had written several very important works about the epigraphy and stressed its importance. Another source for us, Ayam al-Arab. Yes, they were written much later. So this means that the meaning of words were changed. We can't take it the reality that the texts of Ayam al-Arab we have now were the same at the beginning, but they are very, very helpful. The same could be said about Sirah by Ibn Ishaq al-Bakai and Ibn Hisham. It is a good example would be the fragment of al-Sirah connected with family jewelry. Because of it, we can understand. There are called necklace, but it was very special necklaces. We use for the same purpose Sahih al-Mukhari, which help us to understand the differences of the silk. There are harir, dibaj, sundus, and istibrak. I have no time, but there's different. Another source, texts of European travelers to Arabia of 18th, first third of the 20th centuries. And the photograph, even photograph collections of those times, were the collection of Russian Imperial Palestinian Society, which is extremely rich in this connection. Then we have, nobody knows in the West. Everybody knows about British scholars who visited Arabia, yeah? But nobody knows about Russian. For example, Tatar officer of the Russian army, Abdulaziz Davletchin, captain of Russian army, made a Hajj, but it was his secret mission. And as a result, he published a report, and the result of the report was that the possibilities of Russian Orthodox pilgrims and Haji became the same. The free tickets, half-price tickets, and in Russia we have per year in those times 12,000 Christians coming to Jerusalem per year and 25,000 Haji. I have a book, I had also in Arabic about this topic, I had a book, رحلة سرية لدابة روسيا عبد العزيز دافلتشن إلى المكة المكرمة, published in Beirut. And in English and Arabic I have another book which is a very important source for us, devoted to the Navy missions of the Russian fleet, Sufun Rusiya fil Khalij al-Arabi, as you can see. Very important source, the works of Russian diplomats. Alexander Adamov presented fantastic work. Then it was the shadow diplomat, journalist who came here to provide some, it was a great game in between Great Britain and Russia, and he did a lot. And then it is very important here. It was Nikolai Bogayavlensky, Russian zoologist who visited the Gulf to study the pearl hunting. And his main goal was Bahrain. And he left us very important works. If you, Anna, knows this better than me, that if you read the Quran attentively, you will find the ayah connected with pearl hunting, yeah? And so his research, only in Russian, is very important. Another, my book, Al-Hisan al-Arabi fi Russia, fantastic trip of Russian, beef stroganoff, yeah? And it was Princess Olga Sherbatov with her husband and her brother Sergei Stroganov. They visited the area to obtain the Arabic horses, and she left 2 books, very interesting on the topic. Soviet diplomat left us Georgy Astahov, very important work about Yemen. Then a special trip in 1921, it was a cinema expedition, and they produced 5 documentaries, which are priceless. I very much believe, I know where the copies is kept. I would like to take it in a whole and make one big with the explanation. Another topic, Quranic archaeology. Today we were very happy with Anna to see Qalat al-Bahrain. It is fantastic. And it is not me here to say you about the Quranic archaeology, because you have here the Quranic archaeology, because the Quranic archaeology means for me that it is not the archaeology of the time of the Prophet, but the society of the Prophet was constructed. You know, you have these levels, starting from the moon and God knows what. But it is the history of the society. It was the heritage, their heritage. Without understanding it, you are unable to understand the text of the Quran. Specialized items, item collection is Museum of the World. Contemporary historical and ethnographical expedition. I mentioned the expedition Soviet Yemeni. Then we did ourselves several expedition projects in Arabia. I hope we'll be able to continue. And among the material we were gathering in our expeditions, there are not only the items, but also a lot of photographs and video. Please see just 10 minutes. Arabia of the Prophet. This is the presentation of documentary.
В канун возникновения ислама на огромной территории Аравии в 3 миллиона квадратных километров обитало около 7 миллионов человек, более половины из которых вели оседлый образ жизни, и около 3 миллионов были по преимуществу кочевниками. Имелось множество промежуточных, полукочевых, полуоседлых типов хозяйствования. Важно, что основным адресатом коранических проповедей были, несомненно, жители городов и оазисов. Если быть более точным, это Ахль-аль-Кура, жители поселений, расположенных на караванных маршрутах. «О люди, мы создали вас мужчиной и женщиной, и сделали вас оседлыми народами и кочевыми племенами, чтобы вы распознавали друг друга». Основным занятием оседлого населения Аравии было орошаемое земледелие. Коран содержит упоминание множества культурных растений, фруктов и овощей. Это позволяет не только реконструировать важные элементы питания, в первую очередь жителей оседлых поселений, но и понять приоритеты в использовании земель, пригодных для обработки. Он тот, который низвел с неба воду, и мы произвели благодаря ей рост всякой вещи. Мы вывели из нее зелень, из которой выведем зерна, сидящие в ряд. И из пальмы, из ее соцветий бывают соплодья, близко спускающиеся. Выводим и сады из винограда, и маслину, и гранаты, похожие и непохожие. Посмотрите на плоды этого, когда они приносят плоды, и на созревание их. В иссушенной зноем Аравии живительная сила воды кажется еще более удивительной. Там, где проливаются благословенные дожди, или из недр земли бьют источники, иссушенные каменистые песчаные почвы могут в течение короткого времени покрыться сочной зеленью. Постоянное обновление и чудесное оживление природы – одно из важнейших чудес, явленных Аллахом. Жизнь ближайшая, подобно воде, которую мы низвели с неба. Смешались с нею растения земли, которыми питаются люди и животные. А когда земля приобрела свой блеск и разукрасилась, и думали обитатели ее, что они властвуют над ней, пришло к ней наше повеление ночью или днем, и мы сделали ее пожатой, как будто бы она и не была богатой вчера.
При наличии проточной воды орошение насаждений не представляет больших хлопот, поэтому владение финиковым садом – это предел желаний и знак благосклонности небес. Недоверчивые слушатели Мухаммада не раз просили предоставить доказательства истинности его слов и знак расположения к нему Господа.
И сказали они: «Не поверим мы тебе, пока ты не изведешь нам из земли источника, или будет у тебя сад с пальмами и виноградом, и ты проведешь между ними каналы в изобилии». Утрата садов земных сопоставляется со страшной карой, изгнанием из предвечного рая. Разве вы будете оставлены среди того, что здесь, безопасными, среди садов и источников, посевов и пальм, соцветия которых нежны? Образы погубленных селений многократно используются Кораном как прямое напоминание слушателям Мухаммада о судьбах их предшественников, отказавшихся поверить посланникам Господа. Поколение за поколением люди проходили мимо руин набатейских и самудских зданий в Северном Хиджазе, мимо брошенных по разным причинам селений, составленных из традиционных построек из сырцового кирпича, оплывавших и распадающихся от времени. И сколько селений мы погубили, когда они были неправедны. И вот они сокрушились на своих основаниях. Сколько колодцев опустевших и замков воздвигнутых. На протяжении многих веков жители Аравии научились максимально использовать скудные водные ресурсы, создав удивительные по своей изощренности системы орошения. В этом отношении Аравия стоит в одном ряду с великими цивилизациями Древнего Востока. Были разработаны сложные методы сбора, хранения, отвода и распределения дождевой воды. На юго-востоке полуострова, в Омане, получила распространение система открытых каналов, подземных галерей и колодцев, фалач, собиравших и отводивших воды горных водоносных пластов или сезонных паводковых потоков, наполнявших сухие русла.
Здесь невозможно не вспомнить строки доисламского поэта Абида бин аль-Абраса, метафорой слез, у которого были различные источники. «Из глаз твоих катятся слезы, и два этих слезных ручья текут, как колодезный бурдюк в заплатах, изношенный совершенно, или будто забивший ключ, или крупные капли дождя над горными ущельями, или канал в низине русла, что посреди него водою хлещет, или канавка под сенями пальм, что под ними водою бурлит».
В тех районах, где высокогорье задерживало муссонные дожди, активно использовалось террасирование. Это замедляло ручьи, истекавшие с горных склонов, и заставляло воду струиться каскадом по ступенчатым каменным выступам, впитываясь в грунт и сохраняя на каждом участке несомую потоком почву и органический сорт. Террасы поливали поочередно, пуская воду в один из каналов, в то время как два других оставались закрытыми. У подножия склонов поступающую влагу можно было накапливать в резервуарах, для последующего равномерного распределения по водоводам.
Вода – невероятное чудо, оживляющее землю. В Аравии умели ценить и издавна знали, как использовать каждую ее каплю.
И обрадуй тех, которые уверовали и творили благое, что для них сады, где внизу текут реки. Пальмы создают защитный зеленый покров, под тенью которого было возможно возделывать хлебные злаки, овощи и бахчевые культуры. Ветви деревьев с тяжелыми плодами опускаются близко к земле. Листва темно-зеленого цвета создает тень тенистую, а воздух в таком саду насыщен благоуханием трав. На земле есть участки соседние, и сады из лоз, и посевы, и пальмы из одного корня, и не из одного корня, который поет одной водой. Участки делились на квадраты, обводняемые сетью мелких каналов. Земляные насыпи, в которых проходят растительные каналы, разграничивают возделываемые площади друг от друга и делят их на полосы. Приведи им притчу 2 человек. Одному мы устроили 2 сада из виноградников, окружили их пальмами и устроили между ними посевы. Оба сада принесли свои плоды, и ничего из них не погубили, а между ними провели реку. Рай в Коране – это прежде всего райский сад, из-под которого текут реки. Райский сад возвышенный, огорожен, попасть в него можно через врата. Обрабатываемые земли аравийского оазиса обычно расположены вне застроенной территории. Окруженные низкими каменными или глинобитными стенами, плодовые сады простираются вдоль до границы с пустыней. А ведь у богобоязненных хорошее пристанище, сады вечности с открытыми для них вратами. И единственное гидротехническое сооружение, упоминаемое в Коране, это Марибская плотина, ставшая для жителей Аравии одним из символов величия древних. Более 1000 лет 2 водовода этой плотины позволяли орошать и удобрять обширные поля и пальмовые рощи южной и северной долин, приносивших богатый урожай и процветание региону вплоть до последнего и окончательного ее прорыва в середине VI века нашей эры, то есть во времена близкие пророку и его слушателям. Кораническое сообщение об этом событии, основанное, вероятно, на свидетельствах очевидцев, весьма лаконично, но поразительно точно представляет катастрофические изменения, которые произошли с огромными площадями орошаемого оазиса. Он превратился в высохшую степь с дикорастущими кустарниковыми деревьями. У сабовых жилища было знамение: 2 сада справа и слева. Питайтесь уделом вашего Господа и благодарите Его. Страна благая, и Господь милосердный. Но они уклонились, и послали мы на них паводок, плотина Алярим, и заменили им их сады 2 садами, где только плоды терпкие, тамариски и некоторые небольшие терновники. Этим воздали им за то, что они не веровали. Разве мы не воздаем кому-нибудь, кроме неверных? О том, какие поразительные изменения могут стать результатом строительства такого рода сооружений, свидетельствует плотина, введенная в строй в долине Дайка.
So thank you very much indeed for your patience. We will be happy to answer the questions in case you have any.
Dr. Muhammad al-Zikri, I have enjoyed listening to you. It was so much. I don't know what to ask anymore. It's so big. You asked about the publication. You mentioned the publication, but you never mentioned how many. The Quran. How many copies?
How many?
How many copies?
Yes. How many copies of the Quran?
In Russia?
Yeah. In the historical context.
I can say that we have several thousands.
Because one, you said only one copy.
If we speak about the whole Russia. And at least in Petersburg, we have more than 1,000 for sure.
And who is the buyer or for who it was printed? Was it gifts or for local people?
There are, for example, I have a book about the history of the Quran, and my daughter, who follows me also, her name is Mariam. She is Russian, but her name sounds Mariam Rezvan. Yeah? And she made, for example, the catalog of Quranic manuscript, which is attached to this book. In those times, it was the disc. And the catalog of just one of the collection, which is kept in the Institute of the Oriental Manuscripts. Unfortunately, we have no, and this is for us the most approach and most important research work now, but I'm very much hope that one of my pupils will do the catalog of the Quran in the collection of St. Petersburg. And please believe that it would be the copies like these and very small copies put on the top of the banner of the Islamic armies, and in all possible scripts, as I tell, and just is the mirror of Islamic civilization.
No, I meant when the kings and the queens of Russia decided to print the Quran, was it to distribute it to Muslims or to use it as a gift? And was it in a bigger quantity 500 years ago, I mean, like when it all started?
It was the Qurans which were printed, I just mentioned it, which was specially printed for distribution among the Muslims.
Okay.
But as you see, there were the special copies as the diplomatic gift.
I see.
So there were different possibilities.
One final comment, please. My mother is from Arabia, and she will never understand سنسمه على الخرطوم to means to brand, because we distinguish between wasm and nasm. Wasm is to brand. The Quran never said سنوسمه على الخرطوم. It said سنسمه على الخرطوم. It has another meaning.
Значение глагола wasm is not to brand, but to recognize, to see the verb wasama has a meaning of to
doesn't mean to brand.
It means to see a sign from the distant.
Okay, what it means is the big
Mm-hmm.
But the Quran says, "Sanna firuhu." As-sam, as-sin, is how you see Sinyatic, Arabic,
Mm-hmm.
means the road, the back,
Mm-hmm.
but not that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much indeed. She is now writing the article about WASM. So for she, the note is very important. Thank you.
I know that people in Saudi Arabia and in the Bedouins of the Sinai, from the Sinai, young people is using rumuz as wasms, like they use letters from Latin alphabet and numbers and mark the TikTok videos.
And they called it WASM.
It is not wasm, it is rumuz, like wusum.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious and merciful, peace be upon the Prophet Muhammad and his companions and those who followed his lead. I'm Dr. Mahmoud Brahim. I'm the ambassador of Algeria. I would like to thank the Professor Rezvan very much for this very rich work. I cannot really comment about the content of this lecture. It is so large and so rich. It will require perhaps from me 2 or 3 hours of listening and re-understanding, re-studying this this colossus work. So what I can comment, what I can say about this valuable work is also something political. I would like to stress this affinity between Russia and the world of Islam, between Russia and the Arab world. This Arab world, which is the cradle of civilizations. Civilization starts from the Arab world. We find the Arabic name in the most ancient stela in the world that was found in this area, perhaps in Dilmonia. Irnu la Sharukin, Naru la Ramsin, Arab Malucha, Arab Majan. It is Akkadian words. That means that from almost 12,000 years, the Arab world was existing and is still existing. This is one element. The second element is this good relation and affinity between the Orthodox, especially the Orthodox Church, and the world of Islam. When Umar ibn Khattab and those first Islamic Fatihin were going through the Middle East, they found some head of the churches like Mikhail of Damascus. This Mikhail of Damascus thanked the Arab. He said clearly, I would like to thank God because he sent the Hagarian, the sons of Hajar, to help us get rid of those thugs from the Roman world, because they were imposed, they were submitted to taxes and bad treatment from the Romans. So they saw in the Arabs as the savior of their church, because they always respected their church and their religion. And in the Quran itself you find, and among the closest people to those who said, we are the believers, had said, we are the Christians. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a general comment, not a question. First, I would like to say that this is a well-written research about history of Quran in Russia. It is a well-written research, and we are very thankful for this. I myself, I was not aware of such history, and you have done very good research, very good work. And this also comes from Qur'an itself, because Allah says, "Inna nahnu nazzalna adh-dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun." God says, we have put down Qur'an to you, and we are keeping it. And what you are saying clearly shows, "Inna lahu lahafidhun." And you have shown us how "Inna lahu lahafidhun" by your very good research. And very thankful for this. And I think this is good work, and we need such type of work from all Muslim scholars in all countries. Thank you very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy that it is such.
Thank you, Professor. If you can repeat it in Arabic, not today, it will be easy for us to understand what you speak. In Arabic. If you can translate it in Arabic.
Okay.
In the future.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rezvan. Just I want to ask if there is in Russian Islamic school or something for Quran, teaching Quran in Russia. That's it.
We have in Russia the whole set of Muslim education, starting, so the children, for example, I'm living in St. Petersburg, yeah? The population of St. Petersburg is around 5 million people. 500,000 are Muslims. Among them, half are the local population which was living in St. Petersburg from the very beginning. Another people came from Central Asia to work. And the children, there are in the schools, in the Russian schools, in secondary school, children can choose the lessons of their religion, first of all. Secondly, there are special, not Friday, but Sunday school in St. Petersburg, so in the mosque, organized by the mosques, and the children can go and study. Then we have several madrasa all over the country where people can continue their religious education. Then we have the set of higher educational Muslim centers which are working together with, for example, St. Petersburg State University. We are working together, for example, Anna and me, we created the textbook for the Islamic high school. So if you are living in Russia and if you would like that your child will start studying the Quran from his first years, at least from school years, it's no problem at all. And we're happy that it is such.
My name is Abdullah Bakr. Thank you very much for your speech.
Thank you.
And really, we learned a lot of things about Quran, but I have two questions. The first question, when the Quran came to the Russian, is it came from Pakistan or from Turkey or from Azerbaijan to Turkish? And which years? We want to know. And which years you start to study it in the school in Russian? And last question.
Yeah.
What is the oldest Quran? Which years you have in Russian? Which years? Is it whether gold water or normal? Is it color? That's what we want to know. Thank you.
So the Russia was surrounded by the Muslim states, and the copies of the Quran came to Russia from different directions. The oldest copies I have presented to you, it is early 2nd century Hijra, and it came from Central Asia to Russia.
First, I would like to thank Professor for the very rich presentation. My name is Mohiuddin Kayas. I'm the Charge Affairs of Bangladesh. And I also would like to thank His Excellency Ambassador of Russia for arranging very beautiful arrangement where we have very enriched about the history of Quran in Russia. I thoroughly actually enjoyed the whole presentation, and two important points actually came to my attention. The one is still Quran is playing the role diplomatically in the political issues, and which is really true. And the second important point came to my mind, that is the meaning which actually the Quran revealed in 6th or 7th century. The meaning was valid that time, that means ancient time, and still the meaning is also relevant with the current situation or the present scenario. So which actually very rich explanation by your research. So I would like to thank you again for the beautiful presentation.
Thanks, and thanks a lot. So thank you very much indeed. I was trying myself to put it in 1 hour, but was unable, sorry. We have, for example, just to continue answering the question about the education, we have the distant courses, the university. Distant courses. I was a participant in it on Islamic studies, and the big part of it is devoted to the Quran. So it is, you can find it, for example, in the site of St. Petersburg University, and it is a set of lectures. You can listen in any place, and as far as I know, because, how to say it, I received a lot of mails every day from different people. Most of them are Muslims, and they are asking the questions. And I prepared, because the questions are usually one and the same. I prepared the special answers, which I just not automatically, but thank you for a question, and then send this and this, or send to this resource, electronic resource, which is helpful. But everything is in Russian. The thing is that, unfortunately, not so many people reading in Russia, and I'm editor-in-chief of Oriental Manuscripta Orientalia journal, but we published in English. But anyhow, I was trying to present you that we have a lot of interesting things, and we hope to do the best to translate the most important things into not English but into Arabic. Thank you.